Well, the ANC says it has concluded that process of interviewing people who will represent the party in the provincial legislatures and the National Assembly. Speaking to the SABC, the former ANC Deputy President Kgalema Motlanthe, who is currently the chairperson of the ANC's Electoral Committee, says that the list of candidates will be handed over to the African National Congress's National Executive Committee for ratification. Motlanthe says that the names came from a pool of close to 1,000 nominees, and also says that part of those interviewed were bright young people who could articulate the procedures and will do well in representing the public. I'm joined now by Dr. Ongama Mtika, a political lecturer from the Nelson Mandela University, who joins us virtually. Thanks so much for your time, Dr. Mtika, and welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning to you and your viewers, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
So it's list season. It's just a week to go before all political parties, of course, need to submit the list of names of candidates for both provincial and provincial and national candidates for their lists to the IEC. Listening to what Mr. Motlanthe had to say there, what did you make of that as far as the ANC is concerned?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing about this process that the ANC has engaged in is that it brings into the processes of national and provincial government what it started at a local government level of making sure that the selection of who represents the party in government no longer follows the power-centric approach, where you find that if somebody is able to get themselves to be number 1, 2, and 3, and so on in the list, they are guaranteed a place in government. So it's an interesting introduction of a particular procedure that is reflecting of a party that is, I think it remains a power-centric party. It's in politics, right? But is showing due sensitivity to its image as far as it is seen not just by its members, but by the public at large. What in the final analysis gets to be in that list is going to be interesting, whether it's going to confirm that this process of being sensitive to the public image of the party had a preeminence, or in fact it is the power-centric a process of I campaign among the few branches that select me, I get selected, and therefore I get into government. Those are two different, processes which are related, because the one is outwardly looking. When you say, I have to make sure that I've got people with integrity who are going to be on the ballot, you are saying you are outwardly looking because the ANC recognizes that the number of supporters that it has, people who vote for it, is way more than those that participate in its party processes. But the acid test of it all is going to be what the party does with those that have been implicated in wrongdoing, either in those at provincial levels or at national government levels. An interesting thing, Sakina, is that when it comes to provinces and national, sometimes politicians who have failed at the local sphere get redeployed to national and provincial. And it's counterintuitive in my view, because you should be looking at people who are succeeding throughout the three levels and making sure that they are promoted.
So if we look at what has happened in the lead up to this particular list process, and of course it still has to be ratified, you take a step back and you think about what was said by Dr. Mavuso Msimang, for example, when he resigned and then did an about turn. And I want to go back to what Kgalema Mbalula, the Secretary General of the party, had said, and I want to quote him. Kgalema Mbalula said, and I quote, "We are determined that only members whose reputations are beyond reproach will be included in our list of candidates for parliament and provincial legislatures. And this means that those implicated by the Zondo Commission will not be included in our lists if their names have not been cleared by the ANC's Integrity Commission, unquote. And we know there were about 97 people who were implicated. So looking at and just listening to what is being said at the moment, how is the ANC going to deal with that without causing any major ructions in the party?
The short answer to your question, it's going to be a balanced approach between wanting to put people of high repute and not wanting to upset the power dynamics within the party. So, for example, all the people who have been in the news recently and who, according to Section 25 of the ANC Constitution, have brought the party into disrepute and are beyond a reasonable doubt as far as their reputation is concerned. And reputation has got nothing to do with legalistic arguments. Those people are going to be back in Parliament. I can bet my bottom rand on it. They're going to be back in Parliament. That is because the ability of the party to negotiate between power brokers, the political elites, interests, and its aspirational values, the values that it aspires to as enshrined in its constitution, are always miles apart. And it's a political process to get to a party that has got a list of candidates that are, of high repute. Here is a thought, Sakina. If the ANC was serious about the bringing candidates of high repute, it would ask of itself which among us have got, or who among us have got allegations that have been in the public domain, and there's some credence to it, not regardless of whether or not they've been proved right in a court of law, and make a decision that says, well, that's unfortunate. All those who are facing those allegations in the public, they must allow the party the ability to have candidates who have got no questions whatsoever raised about them as they go to this election. They need it because they are facing a siege from centrist parties, center-left parties, far-left, and center-right parties. So, but I think that some of the battles they are not prepared to fight precisely because they would be undoing the party at a time when it's also, remember, there's political homes for people who may be said to have brought the party into disrepute. There's the MK party that doesn't care at all about that. And then there's the other parties that would gladly welcome candidates that have been, sidelined in the ANC because of integrity issues, unfortunately.
And we are fast running out of time, but I just want to get your view, Dr. Mtika, about the list process and numbers, because if we go by some of the polls and expectations that are being put out in the public domain of how the various political parties will fare, and if the polls are anything to go by, the ANC will lose another substantial amount of representation at both national and provincial level. So I heard a number of 160, like apparently that's the number that's being looked at, 160 members, for example, to the National Assembly. What are your thoughts in terms of how that will impact how the list process unfolds?
I think regardless of what the ANC does, it's bound to drop below 50%. So if that is the case, strategically for a party, you would say the opportune moment is now to make drastic, radical changes that are going to set the organization free. Now, that would include from the president, deputy, and then everybody else who's listed in some scandal, resign. And they don't get to be in the list of people that go to the National Assembly. What that does is, again, it's not going to reverse the ANC and bring it above 50%. But what the party elites would have done is they would have carved a new path for the party, led by people of high repute, mostly young, and people who can then help position the party for the 29 and 34 elections.
Well, we unfortunately have to leave it there, Dr. Mtika, but it is election season. No doubt we'll speak again. Dr. Ongama Mtika, let us know your thoughts on this as well. Dr. Mtika is from the Nelson Mandela University, discussing some of the controversies that usually surround the ANC's parliamentary representatives list. And the discussion follows on an announcement that was made by the chairperson of the ANC's Electoral Committee, Kgalema Motlanthe, who said that interviews of the ANC candidates to parliament have now been completed, and the list of those who will be going to Parliament will now be handed over to the ANC's NEC to finalise.